Hi, Darren again, and only looking back over the last 3 months in today's video, because this is R&D, that's Recent and Decent, number 3, a brief run through some of my selected music-related highlights from July through to September of 2023. So let's get to it, starting with some album highlights from over the summer months, and to begin with, my featured album. A full 6 years since their last album release. This is Love's Holiday by Oxbow. So Oxbow, starting as a confrontational, willfully jarring post-hardcore noise outfit, the band have slowly, and that's very slowly, morphed into a, I think, quite unique proposition encompassing bits and pieces of everything from blues and free jazz to intricate post-rock and grungy avant metal. And Love's Holiday sees them stir even more ingredients into that stew. Since their 1989 debut, that's an album whose name I can't repeat in the first few minutes of a YouTube video without losing my paltry ad revenue, all the way through the 90s, several Steve Albini produced albums, and through to the Double O's, where they produced albums such as Evil Heat and The Narcotics Story. They've become increasingly more stylistically diverse. Feedbacking drone experimentation, keys, strings, woodwind even, choral sections. And following that last album of theirs in 2007, there was 10 years of absolutely nothing from the band until 2017, when they re-emerged with Thin Black Duke, which received across-the-board rave reviews on release and showed them, I think, fettling the kind of the structures and the concepts that support their music, more tightly than ever. Musically speaking, guitarist Nico Wenner's heavily theoretical classical instincts underpin all of the writing. Lots of kind of clever theoretical stuff in here, circles of fifths, leitmotifs, palindromic melodies, shifting from major and minor resolutions. There's growling, mumbling, guttural kind of screaming vocals of lyricist and singer Eugene S. Robinson. Whilst they're still intact here, they're displaying, I think, a rich, cracked, plaintive, kind of almost a croon breaking through in a way on Love's Holiday that it hasn't before. I think if you're looking for starting points, for easy comparators for the Oxbow sound as it stands right now, there's some of that manic kind of explosive post-punk style of bands like the Jesus Lizard or the Birthday Party, to look back even further. There are neo-classical elements that recall to me the slithery kind of post-rock melodies of bands like Slint, and maybe those kind of brusque, clipped, stabbing guitars of bands like Bastro. You get a splash of, that twisty kind of post-hardcore riffing that references, classic rock stalwarts like Zeppelin and Sabbath. I'm thinking here of maybe like the DC-based hardcore bands like Shudder to Think or Jawbox. And you also get a dash of that kind of, metal adjacent grunge. Think bands like Melvins, maybe. And I think adding all that up can translate as just too much for some listeners, I think. Or maybe just, not enough of one element and too much of another. They're really not an easy band to get a handle on, despite this, I think, being their most outright approachable album so far. I mean, take the hollowed kind of steam hammer shuffle of opening track Dead Ahead. That one is pure Jesus Lizard. But by track 3, the beautiful, lovely Merc, the sound opens out into a breathy, bluesy, almost post-rock influenced hymn with gorgeous keening backing vocals from Kristen Hayter of Lingua Ignota. And it's from here, I think, that the album becomes imbued with these rich, melancholic textures that pull back from the, ugly, suffocating feel of earlier Oxbow releases. The languid 1000 Hours tease up the centerpiece track of the album, I think, which is the quite astonishing All Gone. It's a mournful piano-led blues chorale that brings to mind, to me, Lyre of Orpheus kind of period Bad Seeds at their peak. Eugene's vocal performance here is amazing. It's cracked, it's destroyed, it's soulful, it's bereft. He sings, "Now the smoke-filled scribe remembers the hand through your hair when you are not here." There's a neo-operatic feel, that super heightened, widescreen emotion that Oxbow mine on Love's Holiday without ever succumbing to those noise rock urges. You can almost feel death metal tritone is about to bubble through at any moment. But thankfully, it never arrives. Things do get a little more explicitly bluesy on $1 Million Weekend and The Second Talk, the latter of which revels in some sublimely threatening spoken word asides from Eugene, punctuated by throaty, Robert Plant shrieks and stinging slide guitar. But on Closer, Gunwale, the choir reappears, accompanying huge, drowning guitars and a gurgling bass with this funereal Bonham beat, this huge, vast, collapsing stage for Eugene to weave a lyric rich with seafaring imagery. Yeah, the control and precision here is something else. That signature Grand Guignol of Oxbow of old is mercilessly reined in to serve the story that Eugene is telling. It is a fantastic album closer. And that is Love's Holiday. It's a really singular album, one where I can't draw a single easy parallel with anything else I've heard of late, which is why I was so keen to give it top billing for this R&D. My experience with the decade's previous iteration of Oxbow really didn't prepare me for this, which shows a band moving on even further than Thin Black Duke had suggested that they were really capable of. So, kudos to Oxbow. On note, the only two other albums here that were, competing for top billing, if you like. Yeah, the second album I'm talking about today is PJ Harvey's Eye Inside the Old Year Dying. I must admit, I was a little concerned on hearing that this album would feature musical, reworkings of Polly's recent long-form poem, Orlam, which is rendered in an obscurant, little-spoken Dorset dialect. And really, I shouldn't worry because musically, to me, at least, this moves the pointer away from the slightly disappointing Hope 6 Demolition Project album, a flawed but interesting project, and kind of pushes it back to somewhere straddling her previous two albums. That would be Let England Shake and maybe my favourite PJ Harvey album, White Chalk. This for me puts this album in a very happy place, and actually the thematic solidity of drawing from Orlam, it ties everything together so much better than the slightly muddled sounding Hope 6. Yeah, the strange kind of vocal inflections and tones work with the odd dialect to really capture a fantastical, almost a folk horror feel, but without ever getting truly horrifying, that I think is close to that haunted, hysterical White Chalk atmosphere. I do think it starts a little shakily. Some of the most mannered, weird vocals feature early on. So for me, the album kind of takes off with Seem Am I, and the whole of its second half, the run from All Souls through to the closer, A Noiseless Noise, is absolutely fantastic. You could think of the album like a novel, which is a bit tough to get into in the opening chapter, but if you persevere with it, you'll lose yourself in it. And like I said, I'm very predisposed to this version of PJ Harvey, and I think minor niggles aside, this is a great return to form for her. And the final kind of biggie, the final big release I'm considering here is Swans and their album The Beggar. And really, Swans have got themselves into a bit of a hole, haven't they? And that's actually a good thing, because music of this type, this kind of transcendental, punishingly rigorous, focused exploration of big ideas, it requires a certain closed-off mindset, I think, that doesn't really allow for distractions, and it filters out, unnecessary influences. And this has been Swan's way of working since their return in 2010, probably even further back than that, but you get the picture. Yeah, I think The Beggar sees them kind of pulling back on the volume lever and revisiting the slightly folkier, lighter sounding territory that Gira stalked out with his time in the Angels of Light during that Swans break circa the turn of the millennium. But honestly, I can't see this album summoning hordes of hitherto undiscovered Swans fans out of the ether. It's a classic, more of the same, but more album, if you see what I mean. Full of drony, transportative ruminations, very repetitive, very intense, and it goes on for 2 hours. And there's even a 44-minute track on the back end of this album. I do like this stuff, just at the right time, in the right mood, and it is a very good album, make no mistake. But all these caveats may chime with you too, and you'll maybe just find yourself reaching for the seer or To Be Kind instead. Yeah, I'm really not being dismissive. It's a very impressive thing that they do, and the Swans faithful will love this without question. Whether that's you or not, only you'll be able to answer, but I'm happy to recommend it nonetheless. Quick mentions for a few other album releases here. Guided by Voices, Welsh Pool Frillies. Well, it has been 6 months since their last album. That was La La Land, which I enjoyed a lot. So I guess another album this year was only to be expected. And what's to say? Yeah, there are no epic 6-minute numbers on this one. And this iteration of GBV are supremely on it. They're more than capable of keeping up with Pollard. And it's another good album. Yeah, you know what to expect, really. And this delivers throughout. The quality doesn't drop off anywhere. A few standouts. Cruiser's Cross is very good. And Rust Belt Boogie is also doing it for me. Yeah, a much more recent one now. One which I need to listen to longer and harder. A quick mention for Bird Machine by Sparkle Horse. This is the long mooted lost album from the late Mark Linkous, assembled by his family. Yeah, if you're a Sparkle Horse fan, you're going to need it, aren't you? I'll hold off with my thoughts on this one because I haven't really had time to get into it. But yeah, we lost a good one in Mark, and it's just really nice to hear him again. Next, Mclusky. They have a new 4-track EP up on Bandcamp. It's kind of a semi-teaser for next year's album. And yeah, clearly it's just an undiluted cash grab from some shameless bandwagon jumping reformers. I jest, seriously. Yeah, Falco has had some health issues over the last 12 months or so, which have really stymied the band's touring commitments, particularly in the US and Australia. The proceeds from this release will help them secure the rather expensive visas they need to complete that curtailed tour of the United States that they had to abandon. The lead tracks are Unpopular Parts of a Pig and The Digger You Deep, and yeah, it's Mclusky. You should know what you're getting. It genuinely is awesome. It really has me salivating for that forthcoming album of theirs. Okay, how about some quick book talk? First two that really probably have no business being in this video because while they're both more than decent, they're far from recent. This is just to kind of tie in with my recent Fall video from a few weeks back. And I want to give the Hanleys a shout for both Have a Bleeding Guess and The Big Midweek. This one is the story of Hex Induction Hour. This is Life in the Fall, as reported by Steve Hanley. They're both really excellent reads. And yeah, the ideal gift for the Fall fan in your life or yourself. A quick mention for a few upcoming, titles, biographies, memoirs, that kind of thing. But they may be available by the time this video goes live. But I've got my eye on these. Yeah, first up, I've got Thurston Moore's Sonic Life, and also Jean-Jacques Burnel with Strangler in the Light. And also of interest for this episode, Eugene S. Robinson with A Walk Across Dirty Water and Straight into Murderer's Row. Yeah, Eugene's quite the guy, as well as singing and being an amazing lyric writer. He's a journalist. He's written fiction. He's written non-fiction. And this is his memoir. Quite a life from late 70s East Coast punk through to, 80s hardcore, through his time as a bouncer and an MMA fighter. It has all the makings of a great read. A brief mention for some films, documentaries, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I've already covered Stop Making Sense. The reissue is now out, as far as I can tell. Unfortunately, I can find no IMAX screenings of it anywhere near my home here in Norwich, so I'm pretty bummed about that. I'm, however, looking forward to the birthday party documentary. That's Mutiny in Heaven, which I think is playing in selected venues in the US already as we speak. I guess it will hit streaming services fairly shortly after that initial run, so yeah, keep your eyes peeled because it looks like it might be rather good. Reissues, box sets, that kind of thing. The big one for me right now would be A Archive. That's the A.R. Kane box set. I'd love it, but it's vinyl only. It's going to be a bit rich for my blood. I'm seeing prices north of 100 quid. It's all the rough trade stuff in one box. That's 69i and the Up Home EP. Very limited, and never mind. Just a brief in memoriam section here. I'll mention a few people who we've lost over the last few months. That'll be Gary Young of Pavement, Brian McBride of Stars of the Lid, John Kesdy of the Effigies, and of course Sinead O'Connor. And that's it for this episode of R&D. I guess the next one will probably coincide with late December, early January, so that one might end up being a kind of an end of year roundup. We shall see. Anyway, all the usual nags, you know, thumbs ups, subscriptions. Yeah, you do what you like. But yeah, whatever. Thanks for watching so far. And that's it for this episode of R&D. Yeah, you all take care, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.